What's going on, guys? It's Rest, and in today's video I'm going to try to make the Elementalist class mod viable. Now, after a full year of playing this game, the Elementalist class mod has been one of the worst class mods in the entire game. No one ever uses it, and it desperately needs a buff. Now, if you don't know what the Elementalist does, it says whenever Amara phase grasps an enemy, her action skill element is applied to all nearby enemies. When the game first came out, and if you read that, you would think this is going to be an insane class mod, but in reality, the damage that applies to these enemies just does not hold up in any part of the game, be it on mayhem scaling or not. So the legendary effect of this class mod is not holding up to what it should. The next thing to look at would be the skills that it provides, and the 3 skills that you can get from it is Wildfire, Infusion, and Violent Tapestry. If you're basing a build all around this class mod, those skills are actually really good, but for majority of the game, those skills do not hold up other than maybe something like Infusion, and that is the skill that I'm going to be focusing on in today's video. So if you enjoyed this video or find it helpful in any way, consider subscribing and dropping a like. It's free, and it's what allows me to keep making videos like this for you guys. All the gameplay you're going to see in this video is from the perspective of this class mod, and I hope that would help you get a better understanding of what I'm about to go over. So like I said in the beginning of the video, this class mod has been pretty much worthless the entire lifespan of the game so far, but ironically, the more the DLCs came out, the more valuable this class mod has gotten. You might be asking yourself, well, how is that? And it is because of things like Guardian rank perks, new artifacts, and new anoints. So to start things off, simply, you can take a look at something like the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge, and the way this works, consecutive hits are going to grant a 1% damage increase per hit up to 15 times, and at maximum stacks, you're getting an additional 90% damage. What this artifact does not tell you that it is every damage in this game. If you apply an elemental effect to an enemy, it is going to count for this. If your grenades hit enemies, it is going to count for this. Literally any form of damage, even if you damage yourself, it counts for this. Now with that knowledge, if you think about the Elementalist where it's going to apply her axe skill element to all nearby enemies when you phase grasp, you're pretty much going to immediately get this to max and have this max amount of damage. That is an insanely strong buff to have through this one class mod, and it's nothing to be slept on. Now, another thing that has came out is new anoints, and just like the artifact, you can have the same anoint on your weapon except you don't get the bonus 90% damage, but consecutive hits increase weapon damage by 1% per hit. Misses remove all bonuses. Again, this works just like the artifact. Every single bit of damage that you do, you're gonna stack 1% of damage. So since you applied your action skill status effect to all the enemies when you phase grasp, you're gonna be stacking your artifact damage up like crazy, you're gonna be stacking your consecutive hit damage up like crazy, and you can start to get a load of damage out for this thing, and we're not even done yet. Now, one of the final things that have been added to help this build out is a Guardian rank perk, and that is Armageddon. So what Armageddon does is enemies take 5% more damage per unique status effect affecting them. So obviously now, since your phase grasp is applying status effects to everybody around them, all the enemies are going to take 5% more damage, and that is just for that one element. But since this is an Elementalist class mod, we're going to focus heavy on doing a lot of elements so we can proc Armageddon as much as possible. So to make Armageddon more useful, we're going to be running things like Wildfire so we can spread our elements even more than what our class mod is already doing. So this has a 40% chance to spread a status effect, which is going to in return start buffing your damage even more with your consecutive hits, plus also starting to get Armageddon on other enemies. And you can also run things like Indiscriminate, so all your bullets ricochet, applying status effects, and start getting these procs up as well. And since you're trying to apply as much elements as possible, things like Conflux will actually help, because at 5 points you're going to have a 35% chance to randomly electrocute, ignite, or melt an enemy. So if you apply one of those status effects to an enemy, this is going to again buff Armageddon, so you can essentially have up to 15% more damage with that. Also, things like Anima is also going to help because your status effects are going to last longer, which in return means more stacking of your damage, more Armageddon on an enemy for a longer time, and you could keep your damage buffs up as long as possible. The longer the status effects are going to stay on an enemy, the more chances they're going to have to spread, the more chances they're going to have to apply other status effects to enemies, which is obviously in return, like I just said, going to buff all your damage, and you're going to be able to just spread elements everywhere to keep all your consecutive hits up at all times. So now you could also run things like ASC anoints to also apply different elements to all your weapons. So you can have things like a radiation and cryo on your shield and grenade. So now you're going to have all 5 status effects applied to enemy, which is returning going to be 25% more damage from Armageddon. Since you have 5 elements applied to enemy, you're going to be stacking your consecutive hits up like crazy to get the same amount of damage with whatever gun you're holding. And your Pearl with all this is going to pretty much always be at max damage the entire time, and you don't have to worry about ever having to reproc that. Things that can also help out with this build is grenades that hit enemies a lot and stay in the air for long. So things like the hex grenades are going to work really well if you can just keep throwing them to keep your damage stacks up. Even things like the cloning magnet tracker, I know that's the most popular one. You can use things things like that to keep your damage up. Now, one last point I want to talk about this class mod that's not all around stacking damage up is the skills that you can get on it. I know I said in the beginning of the video we're going to be focused on Infusion, and that is because you can get 5 points in Infusion on this class mod. So if you have 5 points in Infusion with this plus 5 points in the skill tree, this is going to convert 80% of your damage to whatever axe skill element you're using. This is actually pretty good in some scenarios, because on guns like the Hellwalker that only come in incinerate damage, you can run this setup and run the corrosive axe skill element, and now 80% of your incinerate Hellwalker damage is corrosive, and incinerate is the second part of the Hellwalker. This is really good on any Jacob's weapons because most of them are kinetic, or any weapons kind of like the ASMD or the Krakatoa. You can near 100% change the element of this weapon on whatever you're going against, and you don't have to use it for a specific enemy. Now, if you pair 10 points in Infusion with Forceful Expression, you are essentially getting 98% of that elemental damage on that weapon. So for an example, this is really good against things like the Valkyrie squad. The Hellwalker is now doing 98% corrosive damage, and you can straight up just do a lot more damage because corrosive is really good against armor, where incinerate is not. But this is for any boss in the game. If you want to run a kinetic weapon against Grave Ward, you can run this, put incinerate axe element on, and now your kinetic weapon is doing 98% incinerate damage, which is obviously going to do way more damage to Grave Ward than a kinetic weapon normally would. So with all the stacking of damage from Armageddon, consecutive hits on your weapons and artifacts, and the ability to completely change any element on any weapon at all times, the question is the Elementalist good? And to answer that, I want to be real, it's just okay. The Elementalist is decent if you have everything going right for it. I actually would argue that it is pretty good if you don't have a Phase Zerker, because the gear that you need to get this isn't too bad. All you really need is any gun with consecutive hits, an Elementalist class mod, and the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge, which is a quest item, and you can start to get a ton of damage stacked up really quick and solo a lot of content. But if you just got a Phase Zerker, you could do pretty much the exact same thing, even better. The Elementalist is a fun gimmicky class mod, don't get me wrong, but it's just not going to outperform what the Phase Zerker already does. Sure, you can make sure you have elements on enemies like crazy with 5 points of Valiant Tapestry on top of everything else already listed, but if you have the Phase Zerker giving you a ton of rush stacks with 1 point Valiant Tapestry, you're already going to apply the status effects, and indiscriminate ricocheting stuff is way more than enough to keep your stacks up. But if you want to switch it up and try something fun, definitely try to run the Elementalist class mod. It was actually really fun making this video and trying to use something different and make it meta. And I would say this is meta. You can get through in-game content with this. It's just not going to be as good as what the Phase Zerker already does. Anyway, that's what it all for me. I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the recent support on the channel. It has been absolutely insane. I feel like 2 weeks ago, I recently just hit 3,000 subs, and now I'm sitting at 3,900 on the road to 4K. I seriously thank you guys so much, and it absolutely means the world to me. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
I gotta find a way out of this fucking position. I stay with a gang and don't stress by no bitches. I took all my pain and I put it in records. They turn up the speaker, I turn it to riches. When I'm alone, the past come at a homie, so I feel like turning that boy to a